Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cubism. I'm Aaron.
I'm Drew.
And this week we're talking about the highly anticipated Modern Horizons. I was going to say Modern Masters, but not quite. It's Modern Horizons, the new direct-to-modern format set. A lot of people kind of getting mad that it's not really modern. It's a lot of Commander. It's a lot of Cube. There's a lot of Cube stuff.
Well, it's more push than a standard format would be.
Yeah, it feels like almost like a balance patch for existing cards. If like Wizards were like, all right, well, if we were to remake Ranger Vios to today's standards, what would Ranger Vios do? So it feels like a lot of that. So regardless, like I said, it's been good for Cube. It's surprisingly, I don't know why I'm that surprised, but there's a lot of the card quality we get, a lot of the card selection isn't so much brand new cards as it is just like I mentioned, adjusted cards or existing cards tweaked slightly, or
filling in some holes of cards that were printed before.
Or like some cycles, wink wink. So, I guess we're going to talk about some of the easy ones first, but before we do that, I want to thank the Mana Base. The Mana Base, your home base for all things Magic the Gathering. They're the company that lets us keep doing these things every now and then. So make sure to check them out. That's where we post all of our stuff bi-monthly, quarter-monthly. Not quarter-monthly. Slightly more often. But anyway, so I guess we'll talk about some of the more easier cards first. So we'll talk about just like the Canopy Lands. I couldn't think of a different way to name these cards.
Yeah.
There are five enemy Horizon Canopy Lands. They're surprisingly good.
No way.
Who knew? I can imagine you can justify them in almost any color combination, and they're going to be fine.
They mess with my colorless support, but I think I figured that out.
They do. I think I'd have a harder time putting more of them in if they were allied. Like I don't think I'd play white blue, and I know I wouldn't play, or I wouldn't play white blue. I wouldn't play blue black. But I'm like more into play red blue, and green blue. But yeah. Anyway. Enemy ones are all great. I imagine the red ones will be insane. That being said, I don't know if I'm going to add the Is It one, because I think the red decks will just gobble it up more often than it'll actually see play in the blue-red control decks, if that makes sense.
That's fine. You could splash a Manowar or something.
So there's maybe if you want to if you're awful cycles, you can just jam them all in. But most often they're just going to be the best option after your obvious ones. So. Yeah, I imagine to see those in a lot of cubes soon near you. And then we got Deep Forest Hermit. Deep Forest Hermit is just a better deranged hermit.
Outside of really specific scenarios?
Yeah, so it's 3 green, 1/1, makes 4 squirrels, all squirrels go plus almost 1, vanishing 3, as opposed to Echo. And every single time I've talked about this card to anybody else, they've said, well, what if I want a recurring number at the following turn? That is the only instance where Deranged Hermit is better. So Deep Forest Hermit, I guess, is going in over Deranged Hermit.
I might add it in addition. Haven't figured it out yet.
Tribal Squirrels, no.
Big fan.
And this one's a little different. Instead of Beast Within, we get Generous Gift. So 2 and whites, Beast Within, instant, destroys target online permanent. They get a 3/3 elephant in exchange with great art and flavor text. But I guess unlike green, where green doesn't have a lot of ways to interact with your opponent on your board, white has many, but they're all enchantments generally, or path exotics. But if you don't want to play one of the many Oblivion Rings that exist, being able to answer your Planeswalkers and hard deal with permanents on your opponent's turn, Generous Gift is a nice gift.
I don't even like Beast Within in green, so.
Yeah, I'm never super jazzed about it, but it being around, every now and then you get the pop Planeswalker or something like that. You feel pretty good about it, but that brings us to the Giver of Runes, the younger sister of Mother of Runes. She looks younger.
I don't. You don't have the art up.
I don't. It's 1 white for 1/2, a core cleric, so it's cleric still instead of but concede to the creature core. The notable difference is it gives another target creature you control protection from the color of your choice or colorless until end of turn, but not able to target itself.
Well, I guess this one's way more fair in the people who are angry that Mother Runes is so good at protecting itself.
Yeah,
It's
sometimes
just
it
blanks
feels
removal.
like if you untap with, if your opponent gets on tap with Mother
Yeah.
Runes pretty early on, it feels really difficult to interact with your opponent's board. But Giver of Runes makes everything a little fair while also getting protection from artifacts. So I don't think this is just a better Mother Runes. I think Mother Runes is just the better option. Being able to protect itself is greater than being able to protect from Masticore. But if my cube is big enough, I'm sure Giver of Runes is still a good card. I think regardless, it's still, even though it's not Mother of Runes, it's still going to be a good Mother of Runes either way. But if you want to double up on the effect, I'm sure both of them would get. This is, I guess, the most new card so far. That's Prismatic Vista. So it's a land, you tap, pay life, search your library for a basic land, and put it into play. Untapped, very important. Just the Terramorphic Expanse we all wanted, and we all got. It's such like a easy design that I'm not surprised that all we have finally. I expected it to be in a commander set.
Yeah. And then you get non-foil versions. I'll be real sad. Yeah.
Yeah, almost like, you know what, they've been, instead of doing the like themes every year, they've been doing a little more like, here's a 2-color deck, monocolor deck, 5-color deck. It almost would have been in like the Dragon deck, for example, or one of the 5-color decks, but instead we get it in.
I wouldn't be
Modern
surprised if it
Horizons.
shows up in the next Commander edition anyways.
Yeah, no, this card seems like almost like a obvious that it exists eventually. So I'm gonna cut one of them. I assume I want to say Evolving Wilds because it's newer than Terramorphic Expanse, but I like the art for Evolving Wilds more than I like the art for Terramorphic Expanse.
Pictures and drops.
So I'm sure I'm gonna play one or the other, but having all three I'm sure isn't bad too. Having more fixing
I'm going to jam
never
it
really
in.
hurt anybody. So yeah, your cube's a little bigger, so I'm sure it's easier to fit. And the last card we're gonna cover quickly is Sarah the Benevolent. This card is brand new, but it is super old. So
So
it's
what, like
been
6 weeks or something at least?
yeah, it feels like forever. This card got spoiled. So it's 2 white, legendary Planeswalker Sarah. That starts with 4 loyalty, +2 creatures you control flying, get +1/+1 till end turn. -3, create a 4/4 white angel token with flying and vigilance. And then -6, you get an emblem with if you control a creature, damage that we dealt to you that reduce your life total to less than 1 is instead 1.
You need to read Worship? Not familiar with it?
It's not exactly, I guess. So 4 mana Planeswalker that makes a Sarah Angel when it comes into play. The +2 ability isn't super relevant on board most of the time, but it does emblem the following turn, which is extremely good. It's very, very powerful. Maybe too powerful in a limited environment.
Yeah, outside of the sweeper planeswalkers, so what, Elspeth, 6-mana Elspeth, 6-mana Chandra, even the new Liliana, I think this might be the most powerful planeswalker in Cube, just because if you can emblem, it is, most decks can't deal with it.
It emblems so fast, and there are some decks that are just cold. Like, I just can't remove your
you
whole
have
board.
to have a Wrath.
So certain colors will be, certain colors will just be cold to it versus others. It makes you play Magic that's different access, which is really weird. Again, for limited. So I think the obvious swap is Gideon of the Trials. Not Gideon of the Trials. Gideon. 4-mana Gideon, which I'm for some reason... Ally Zendikar. Gideon, Ally Zendikar.
I'm not going to bail you out on these. I enjoy it too much. So.
I still like more. It's comes out at 4. It makes it 2/2 every turn. Can emblem to give you your Glorious Anthem, your team permanently. And its ultimate, I actually don't remember at the moment. But...
Yeah,
Oh, that's not true. It's the emblem, and then it animates itself.
Yeah.
Very Gideon fashion. But Sarah the Benevolent, if I'm removing its emblem from the equation because I really, really dislike it, I don't think I like it more than Gideon, but then obviously the emblem puts it more over the top, but I don't really like how it interacts with Cube. So I don't think I'm going to add Sarah
Try it out
again
with care.
just because of the worship effect. I expect it to make very polarizing games, but the card is good regardless. It's Planeswalker,
It's like Jace Memory Adept polarizing.
Probably. Jace Memory after a while could probably win you the game or kind of do nothing. So, at least Sarah, you get a 4/4. That's great. But that's it. That's all the cards we want to talk about quickly. So we'll get into, I guess, the cards we want to talk about. Maybe a little more, some not so much, but anyway. But that'll start us off with Archimedes Charm. So it's blue instant. Choose one. Counter target spell. Target player draws 2 cards. Or gain control of target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less. Blue.
This is not castable.
Right, but Cryptic Command's castable.
Yeah, but Cryptic Command's good on, like, turn 7?
Is this card not good? Let's say you play this card for turn 4, turn 5. Is this card not good?
It will do what you want, probably, but so will dissipate?
Well, yeah, but I think dissipate can't turn into a divination. Dissipate can't steal a mana vault.
All right, before we go any further, are you trying this out?
I'm not.
Okay.
Now, I'm not sold on the card either. I do, I want to, looking at this card, I immediately think of, well, I can cast Cryptic Command. This card isn't that bad. I'm obviously not casting it on 3, and let's say I cast it on 4. Like, this card's probably fine, but then the more I think about it, like, I don't really think that this counterspell I want to cast on 4, I'm going to feel pretty bad, I think, when I can't cast it on 3. The Divination is a feel-good. It's a good backup mode when you don't need the counterspell. But then the third mode, I don't think it's going to come up all that often, if ever, with the rare exception of being able to steal a powerful mana artifact, or maybe a Deathrite Shaman, or something along those lines of something that's really powerful later in the game.
Well, it's a charm, so charms are hard to evaluate sometimes, depending on
Yeah, not if
the environment.
If the third mode was as powerful as the first two, I'd be much more game. But I think that you put a lot of weight in the counterspell with the divination backup or divination other option, and I don't think that's the 1.5. I want to say 1.5 modes, but it's I'm giving the divination probably not enough credit there. But I don't think that's enough to justify the triple blue, unfortunately. Cool card though, really cool design. I'm interested for it in Modern. It's one of the cards that I think will actually probably see someone to play in Modern itself. The set it's designed for. Because again, in the blue white
Format
control
ends at
decks,
turn 3. What's this thing gonna do?
I can draw 2 cards.
Ooh.
Anyway, and I do think this card's a cool modern card, but I think it's a little bit of a miss for Cube. And that brings us to I guess one of the first interesting cycles in this block, and that's the Force of block, starting with Force and Negation, that eventually was revealed to be a cycle, one for every color. So let's start with Force and Negation. Force and Negation is 1 blue instant. If it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card rather than pay its mana cost. Counter target non-creature spell. If it's countered this way, exile it instead of putting it to its owner's graveyard.
So first off, I hate the puns that they keep jamming into these names.
Yeah, I really don't like it too. Like, I literally day 1 of spoilers, they spoil Force and Negation. Well, that's not true. Day 1 after Sarah and Cabal Therapist, Force and Negation, and then the Hermit. And then for future cards we'll talk about, instead of being, again, like I said, instead of being direct reprints, they're kind of like patched versions of cards they wanted to kind of seed into Modern. Cool. It's like it has the Force of Will castable effect, but that isn't enough. We have to put the name as part of its name, so it's Force of Negation, maybe combining to be one of the worst names ever printed in Magic.
No, we're gonna get to that one.
Similar to Deep Forest Hermit, get it? It's like Deranged Hermit. It makes squirrels. It says Hermit in it. Get it? Okay, listen. I appreciate these nods to older cards, and it's awesome. I love the flavor, but you just have to shove it down my throat with the name, too. Because Force of Negation is a bad name. It is not... Anyway. Force of Negation. So you don't lose a life, which is a nice trade-off. I like that. I feel like they tested this card a lot. I'm sure they started with the blue one specifically, so it wasn't good in combo decks, but it was good against combo decks. But just outside of that, it's a negate that costs 3 mana instead of 2, and the upside is I can cast it for free on my opponent's turn. I really, really like Negate in Cube. I know some people don't run the Remove Soul Negate package. They prefer to have the more broad counterspells, but I like having Negate. I like having Remove Soul. There's almost no matchup where one or the other is bad, with Negate being having more hits than Remove Soul, if that makes sense. I'm never sad running those effects. So am I sad running that effect for an additional blue? If it was 2 and a blue, obviously I'm super, super game, but 1 blue with the upside of being able to force it. Is that a sell for you?
No, definitely not. I don't like signing up for card disadvantage, or this being so slow where you're forced to either do card disadvantage to save the game, or it's just a turn to behind, so you can't It has to be a blue deck, right?
Yeah.
To cast this thing, you have to be base blue. If
enough
not,
blue cards lying around to make it good enough.
You have to be 70-30 blue.
I think I think this card's a little easier to fit in, but I think Force of Will it's like a, I want to say bad rap. It's the opposite of a bad rap. People just look at Force like, this card's insane. I can pitch any card to counter any spell I want. But I think once you play like a real amount of Legacy, or play with that card a little bit, pulling the trigger on Force of Will too soon on the wrong card sets you back. The amount of card disadvantage sets you back often puts you in a way worse spot than you think of it, and kind of in the moment, or you kind of look back like, well, you know, these 2 cards that cost me plus, you know, whatever I could have played instead. It looked free, but it wasn't. It came at a cost, and very often forcing the wrong card, especially in Legacy, like which is obviously a more hyperbolic format, is going to punish you way more than reward. So, Force and Negation, I think if you're in the camp of doing more unfair things, this card obviously, you know, skyrockets in value in a vintage environment, you know, stopping some amount of crazy powerful, like, again, Mana Vault, Twister effects, like something very, very busted very early on in the game. The card obviously scales in value dramatically, but in a fair game, world of Magic, like
That's where I live.
where Drew and I generally play, like I play an entirely Legacy card pool. Drew's extremely close, so this card, like, I guess, scales much worse. That being said, I do like Negate a lot. I'm probably pretty close to trying it just as 3 mana Negate, but I'm not necessarily sold on it. I think I'll have to play with it a bit. I'm sure this card will mostly end up having good big stories because of its, you know, forcible effect.
That's how Force lasts, right? You know, you force that one spell when you're tapped out, and
and then
win the game.
And then how many times you hard cast it still, and it's not, you know, it's not that bad.
I enjoy hard casting Force of Will. I think it's great.
So I think overall this card is good. Still sticks to it. It's probably good for Modern regardless. Obviously we're talking about limited, but I'm a fan. I'm probably going to try it, assuming it doesn't cost $1 million. Then I might, you know, stand off a bit. But either way, it was a good introduction to what would be a fairly interesting cycle. So let's go, I guess, to the next one, just based on almost no order. Force of Despair, and again, not a very good name. Force of, this doesn't really make a lot of sense. 1 black instant. Again, if it's not your turn, you may exile a black card from your hand instead of paying the spell's mana cost. Destroy all creatures at end of the battlefield this turn. This card is a more interesting take, because I like black doesn't have that effect. Like, I can't have a card that does this outside of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, this is a targeted way to kill, like, say, Inkwell Leviathan.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of new territory in that regard.
Right, there's no, like, black card that's just, like, destroy all creatures that came into play this turn. Or there is, and I'm blanking because it's been unplayed. It hasn't been playable. So this card's a little more interesting. I think, I'm trying to think of a world where, what if this was just an edict?
Well, I played Slaughter Pact for quite a while, and it's not that dissimilar, because it sets you back, but in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But this doesn't have the non-black clause, so it's more playable. And we do have 3 mana removal spells, like Hero's Downfall, but those hit Planeswalkers.
Yeah, so the good part about this card is the 1 black upfront mana cost is also just, it's a good rate. Right, if this card costs 4, I wouldn't really be game. Obviously, 2 is too good. But at 3 mana, I think this card's interesting enough that I can force it on my opponent's turn if necessary, or just the 3 mana, kind of sitting on an edict. Like, how often is this card gonna be better than an edict? There's like probably what I'm more concerned about. But the card is an interesting design enough that I think I'm gonna try it regardless, because again, this effect isn't common at all. So I am definitely interested in trying it out. And the last one we need to talk about, because that's not true. We'll talk about the red one. It's bad. Okay, we'll talk about the green one. So the green one is 2 green. You get the, again, discard a green card instead of paying its mana cost, or exile. And it destroys up to 2 target artifacts or enchantments. If you play that card and it resolves, it's one of the only ones, if not the only one. That's not true. It's probably one of the only ones that you'll break even on. You spend 2 cards, destroy 2 cards. Right? The black one, if you get multiple cards off it, it's a home run. The blue one, you're 2 for 1-ing. The white one, we're unknown for 1-ing. Who knows? Or for 2-ing. Who knows? But the green one, you're for sure getting 2 for 2 value out of it. Now, you just have to have 2 targets. In Vintage, I'm more likely to have those effects. Not in Vintage, I don't know if I like this card at all. So, that one is extremely polarizing based on, I guess, what your cube makeup is. But if you can very often get 2 targets off of it, it's very good.
Well, it's not very often to get cards for like 360 powered, then you got to think about it, right?
Yeah.
You can maybe get 1 a set. No, you're actually getting some options.
Yeah, absolutely. So Force of Virtue, I thought was an instant that was just the most unplayable card I've ever seen in my life. So 2 white, enchantment, not instant. If it's not your turn, you may exile a white card rather than play the spell's mana cost. Flash, creatures you control get +1/+1. I thought this was just a force that only gave your team +1/+1 turn, making it stone unplayable.
I was staring at this for a while, and I was really excited, and then I just got real focused on the 2 white. And I was like, why couldn't this just be Flash Glorious Anthem?
Yeah, and I think that's all the conversations I have with people are, I'm way more in for this card if it's just, for Cube specifically, if it was just Glorious Anthem mana that I could force on my opponent's turn. Like, is that isn't too powerful for Modern by any means. Like, Glorious Anthem isn't anywhere close to playable card in Modern. I'm really curious how much testing they did to make it cost 4 instead of 3.
I thought I saw a fake spoiler. It was like Flash. So this is the white one. It was Swords to Plowshares, but for 2. I was like, I could see that. That'd be pretty. And then we got this
forcible single target removal would be pretty insane, regardless of the upfront mana cost. Yeah. But Force of Virtue, again, bad name, is a different Glorious Anthem. There's a lot of Glorious Anthems you can play. Glorious Anthem, Spear, Heliod. You can play Dictative Crufix. Nope, Dictative Heliod. That's the one. So I haven't played a Glorious Anthem effect, like with one of the 3-mana ones, for a long time. They haven't really performed. I tried Honor the Beer for a bit, only for it to kind of fizzle pretty hard. The only one I've had success with at all is Dictative Heliod. And that card's more fun than it is good. I know that. On my inside.
It still puts up results. Like, you can keep saying that, but if you just keep dying to it, then...
Like, I die more often to, I guess, the underrated Eldrazi Monument. That card wins more games by a country mile. But I do like, at least even if it is only, if I'm convinced it's only fun versus good, I do like Dictative of Heliod. For Force of Virtue, I feel like I never, ever want to cast this for 4 mana. Because the plethora of like white 4-drops to 5-drops, like once you start getting into that mid-range part of white, there's more than enough options that I don't know if I want to play an enchantment for, but would I do it if I can get rid of one of my many Savannah lines later on in the game for it? And I'm not super sold on that
later
either.
On in the game means you'll just cast her for 4.
Like, I think, what are the odds that I have this super aggressive rollout where I can force it on my opponent's first turn, so my Savannah lines is now a 3-2, and then hopefully I'm going to steal the game early, that the 2 cards I went down for this effect is enough. So I don't know.
There's a term for that.
What's that?
It's called Magical Christmas Land.
I'm not sold on Force of Virtue. I still think while it's an enchantment, it is an interesting enough card. If you're looking for more of these Glorious Anthem effects, I would probably play over a second Glorious Anthem, the 3-mana ones. But I'm not in that camp, so I'm not looking for Force of Virtue. But even then, even though
it's a lot of butts, you can say.
Yeah. Again, Dictate. If I'm hard casting either, Dictate just costs 1 more mana, bigger effect, doesn't have the upside. This card is most likely better than Dictate, but I just don't want to believe. That's where I'm at.
You're gonna try it. You've been talking about it for too long.
No.
Yeah.
No, we're not talking about the red one. We're actually talking about briefly. It's bad. Moving on. So that brings us to Ranger Captain of Eos.
Worst card name in Magic.
Descendant of Knight Captain of Eos, or Ranger of Eos. Who knows? I guess before we get into Ranger Captain of Eos, I want to bring up that, back when Wizards printed this Mythics and there'd be big flashy effects, blah, 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 not for tournament staples, this and that.
First set was.
And then, Shards of Alara. And then right into Zendikar. Right into Lotus Cobra. Everybody mad. Since then, Vengevine, everyone is still getting mad. But this set has to have the lowest CMC Mythics across the board. Like, if you pull every set in Magic, right, they have, this thing's Mythic, Mox, obviously, 2-mana Planeswalker, Seasoned Pyromancer. It's so many Mythics. The 1 green Savannah Line's Mythic. So many low to the ground Mythics. It's actually insane. Not that it's an actual problem. I just like complaining about things. Like all Magic players. Anyway. Ranger Captain of Eos. 1 white, 3/3. Human Soldier. Human's good. That's a nice creature type. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a creature card with convert mana cost 1 or less. Put the card in your hand, shuffle your library. And then you can sacrifice the Ranger Captain to your opponent can't cast non-creature spells this turn.
Ranger Captain.
The Ranger Captain of Eos. Name's bad. Hey, I don't know if you know this, but it's a reference to Ranger of Eos.
It could have been a Dauntless Escort ability.
It could have been. I'm actually. That's what I kind of had thought it was going to be, and it kind of is. It's able to stop your opponent from wrathing you. If if it's a crucial turn, you need your creatures.
If you math it out and you know you're going to kill him, you can.
Yeah.
Dauntless Escort.
It's able to force through. I need to resolve this Elspeth, or I need to resolve something that's going to fairly back. I'm resolve an Armageddon. Its effect's very, very good. It's very, very upside. It does only interact with a handful of colors, but regardless, it's kind of a tactile ability that it isn't required to make the card already pretty good. So 3 mana 3/3 for unfortunately the double white, but
Double white.
interesting enough that this one deserves a spot. White needs more 3s, but not necessarily more double white 3s.
Yeah, I think that's might be the mana cost that makes me not want to try it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try it. Yeah. Speaking of Seasoned Pyromancer. Seasoned Pyromancer, 1 red. 2/2 Human Shaman. Again, human good creature type. When it enters the battlefield, discard 2 cards. Not an option. You must discard 2 cards. Then, draw 2 cards. For each non-land card discarded this way, create a 1/1 red elemental creature token. You can then pay 5, 3 red, and exile it from your graveyard to create 2 more elemental tokens.
This has to be make guys discard lands, not discard gas.
Yeah, I think, let's say you compare it to like a Faithless Looting effect. So in a format like Modern, what this card is obviously designed for, where you can manipulate the cards you want to discard, so you can discard cards like Faithless Looting, like Lingering Souls, like those kind of effects, Phoenixes. This card has much more upside. In the more limited environment that we're playing, smoothing out your draws is kind of where you're at. You obviously can't play your limited deck with enough guaranteed hits to make the cards you discard of value. So more often than not, you're going to want to kind of, again, smooth out your hand. So if you need lands, you're going to keep them. If you have too many, you're going to discard them. So this card, I think, is going to have a lot of ups and downs. It's probably going to make a guy when it comes into play, and then 5 mana make 2 guys. Its body's not good. Its mana cost is unattractive.
They don't fly. They don't have any evasion. Or
it sounds really weird.
It's a bolt effect, like
the Mardu Pyromancer deck isn't even that good in Modern. Not even that good to just ban. But we need another Pyromancer. Bad body to CMC.
This is what happens when you level up.
Why is it mythic? Why was the Ranger Captain mythic?
Because he's no longer young.
It is just older young Pyromancer, which I like. But yeah, I'm out.
Did you get the reference?
All right, more
references.
This isn't a reference. This is more cycles. Since we got Canopy cycle, Sword cycle. Anyway.
Well, this is Sword, 7 and 8?
Wow.
Dungeons
do you
and Dragons?
Count? Well, 7 and 8. That means you're also counting Sword of the Meek. And other swords I'm forgetting.
5.
Right, 6.
Plus Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I'm bad at math. Anyway.
Did you play Magic?
Anyway. Sword of Truth and Justice, and then Sword of Sinew and Steel. Sword of Sinew and Steel got a lot of flack for the name, but I actually like it a lot. Well, Truth and Justice is very on the nose. Of like, what a surprise! It's blue and white.
Yeah. Well, generally you mix steel in with things that make them strong. Steel's a base.
Again, actually, when Truth and Justice got spoiled, I remember thinking to myself, if this sword gives protection from white and blue, like, wouldn't it be the opposite of Truth and Justice? Like, I'm trying to kill these Truth and Justice-y guys if I'm attacking something. Anyway.
Oh, they're charging in with the power of Truth and Justice.
But then they have protection from themselves. What's the kayfabe? What's the flavor? Anyway, 2 new swords. Everyone excited. Everyone jacked. Chris Ron trying to finish off the cycle. So I'll read them. I'll go through them both quickly. So Sword of Truth and Justice as 3 mana equipments. It gives equipped creature +2/+2 and protection from blue and white. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control and then proliferate. Equip 2. So it doesn't have to target itself; it can target any creature. And then Sword of Sinew and Steel, 3 mana artifact, equip 2. Equipped creature gets +2/+2 protection from black and red. Whatever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy up to 1 target planeswalker and up to 1 target artifact. So I think these swords, up front, this brings up the conversation, like, are swords good? So there's a camp of people who cube. Swords are insane. First pickable, bananas. The cubes play 5. Then there's the other side of the fence, where swords are like, I'm not that happy with them. They sit in a lot of sideboards. I've slimmed down from 5 to 3 to 2 to maybe even less.
Currently play 2.
I'm at 3, and I'm not super happy with 3. So we're in the Camp B. Camp A, who is running all 5 swords and pro swords.
Which includes the Moto Cube.
Really like these effects. So I guess our experience of it is they've aged poorly. They only age worse as time goes on. They're very, very clunky. It's fairly difficult to get through unless you just happen to pair up the correct protection.
They're sideboard
opponent.
A lot. And
yeah,
they fit into some main decks when you kind of need some other angle to attack from.
Yeah, so I guess not only the sword but the protection discussion all happens all at once here, and that's swords will most often stay in sideboards, unless I'm happy to be playing against my red-black opponents. So my protection from his deck sword will be very good. Who knew? But more often than not, or they do just kind of rot in sideboards. So, does that make them good? Does having this one card be played against another specific color or color combination good?
I guess it depends on what you're into.
So I guess it comes down to a lot of the protection color or the effect that's attached to it. So Sword of Truth and Justice, blue-white sword, compared to the swords that I currently run. So I run Feast and Famine, Fire and Ice, the obvious ones, and then I run the third sword of Light and Shadow, which I switched from
War and Peace?
War and Peace not long ago, because the on-hit effect, the gaining life, the Raised Dead, the card you got off Raised Dead was more valuable than any other of the sword options. Sans, green-blue, but the Millington I'm not a huge fan of. So anyway, Truth and Justice, its effect, its protection colors are bad, not good.
And the effect is
blue's not good,
not strong.
white's okay. The effect of getting 2+1/+1 counters and maybe proliferating with other active spells, it's not good. I don't like the sword at all. I think it's probably the worst sword in the cycle. Unless you're specifically supporting some sort of proliferate theme, I think it's just the worst one.
I agree.
Sword and Sinew and Steel is the opposite of the coin. Best color protection from colors combination. But then, really bizarre effect.
I actually like the effect a lot, because you always, when you have, for some reason, when you're attacking with a sword, some people, more than likely than others, you often have to choose between hitting them or a Planeswalker. Mm-hmm. And there you just get the kill a Planeswalker.
This one does get both. So my problem is actually that if it's any other sword and I'm connecting, I'm going to be able to kill the Planeswalker regardless, but I don't get the other benefit, which I get. But then the other side of this, Destroy an Artifact, again, is very... You kind of have to have the target. Maybe I'm underrating that ability a lot.
This sword keeps the other swords in check.
This sword, it's funny, you can have the Sword of Sinew and Steel matchups. They just keep destroying each other. But, so the Planeswalker effect, I'm not a huge fan of. What are the odds that I have a guy, equip a sword, get in, and I'm able to also destroy a Planeswalker? And let's say, hypothetically, let's say it's in red or black. Right? And the other side of it is, how often are they going to have an artifact to hit? So, how often will I get both sides of it? If this sword activates both sides of it, I'm sure it's the best one. Yeah. If you hit a Planeswalker and an artifact, if this card connects, it has to be the best sword of all.
It's the highest variant sword.
But, how often are you going to have either target? Never mind one. So, especially for Drew and I, again, everyone's cube is going to affect this card, I think, a lot. If your cube has all the signets, or a lot of talismans, you have way more targets more often. If your cube doesn't have a limit on Planeswalkers, and there's 3, 4, 5, 6 in some color combinations, this card's going to be significantly better. But for both Drew and I, we don't run the slew of mana artifacts. We trim back a lot of our Planeswalkers, so this card's just going to be worse. At the end of the day, but
great protections.
But its protection is the best. So. I think if I have to, if I keep going, I'm probably going to try out cut Sword of Light and Shadow anyway, because I'm not happy with it, and I'd be interested in trying Sword of Sinew and Steel to see how often it does come up.
In addition to the other two, or
in addition to the other two, but then I'm going to start. I already feel pretty bad that Black randomly has hate against Feast and Famine, Light and Shadow, or Sinew and Steel, and Mirror Crusader. So
you still run Mirror Crusader?
I still run Mirror Crusader. I think I still run Mirror Crusader. Anyway, so you have these. How fun is it that my opponent just happens to have a creature that's protection from my whole deck?
Maybe that's why Black's unplayable. People are like, Black doesn't. It's so hard.
I don't even know if I run anymore. But anyway, it brings up the conversation of is having these effects in your cube even fun? Is it even worth it? So we are in obviously camp. Not everyone swords aren't necessarily good enough, but it doesn't take much for your cube makeup to change to make swords very, very good. You're playing slower format, you're playing a more mid-range, control-focused, you're playing those kind of things. Commander, if you will. The Commander cube. These effects will run more rampant. The investment cost isn't that big a deal. Being slower isn't that big a deal, and having these consistent threats on the board is good. So, I will not be running 7 swords. I'll be running 3, maybe 2 soon. But
Sword of Vengeance?
Not Sword of Vengeance. It's a bit of a tangent, but we're gonna get more of them eventually. The same topic's gonna come up again. Better? I don't know. Ultimately,
get that off your chest?
ultimately, this is how we feel about it and how it affects our lists. It's gonna affect everyone says differently. I think the faster your cube is, the worse these cards are. Generally, even if I have 40 Planeswalkers in my cube. So that brings us to Ursa, Lord High Artificer. 2 blue, 1/4, not a Planeswalker, unfortunately. When Ursa, Lord High Artificer comes into play, create a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this creature gets +1/+1 for each other artifact you control. Just like Karn, the 4-mana Karn that just got printed, Tap it on top artifact you control, add a blue to your mana pool. And tap 5, shuffle your library, then exile top card of your library, or exile top card. Until out of trade, you may pay that card without paying its mana cost. Like Temporal Aperture from Urza Saga, right? The same card?
Well, you're the lore expert. Did he make Karn?
Yeah.
Yeah, so then it makes sense.
No, it makes sense that they make the same token. No, it's very, very flavorful. But
I thought it was a Planeswalker for a while when I read it initially.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Urza.
They announced that there would be 2 Planeswalkers in the set, and one was Sarah, obviously. So I was hoping there'd be some sort of iconic old character, and then when I heard Urza got spoiled, I was like, oh sweet, he's a Planeswalker, and then he got a creature. That being said, I think the creature's cool enough, but
it's upping the mythic converted mana cost to 4.
Even 4 is not even that much. So Urza is a 4-mana 1/4 that makes a where's the 1/1 when it comes into play that can tap that mana immediately. So it kind of costs 3, well, not actually costing 3, but it's 4 mana, 2 bodies, and then has this weird upside effect that you probably don't activate that often in blue. But it's very flavorful.
Big fan of the Temporal Aperture.
It's flavorful to what Urza did in when he was around. So similar, if you already support those kind of artifact strategies like the Tezzerator decks, this card seems to slot in fairly easily. It's a interesting blue creature which we don't get very many of.
This sweet blue-red Thopter deck.
Yeah. This the construct token that Karn makes obviously can grow fairly easily, especially with very little support. So I'm pretty impressed with the card. I will not be playing it because I do not support I don't have the surrounding cast that make Urza good, but it's a powerful card regardless. And I'm very interested to see the deck that activates the 5-mana ability in this.
Any deck, just
you can
maximum fun.
But if you're just I guess you just kind of roll the dice and hopefully hit big payoffs. But again, significantly harder in a limited environment, So anyway, it's a cool card regardless. Speaking of cool cards, I don't know if this is one of them. That's really cool art. Winds of Abandon. 1 and a white sorcery. Exile target creature you don't control. For each creature card exiled this way, its controller searches their library for a basic land card and puts it into play tapped. The shuffle library.
So this is the swords kind of effect we got. That's got Overload.
Overload. 4 white, so it targets all of your opponent's creatures. So obviously I think the easiest comparison is Declaration Stone.
Yeah.
2-mana Path to Exile, 2-mana Sorcery Path to Exile. That has the upside, huge upside, of plague winning my opponent's team. Or settle the wreckaging my opponent's team. However you want to look at it.
It's kind of a downside for me. Because I don't want too many Wrath effects in my list. And if I just slot this thing in, how often do you think this is going to be a Wrath? 40% of the time?
No, I think it's going to be less than that. But I think when it is just 6 mana, wipe your board, it's a one-sided. It's super good. It's cripplingly good.
It's Mizium Mortars, right?
It does make your opponent essentially draw gas for the remainder of the game.
Yeah, but if they're dead, it doesn't matter.
I think Mizium Mortars is actually a pretty good comparison because I think it's the upfront part of Mizium Mortars is better. That I can just slam it on 4 and I don't think about it because it's if I don't really want to path them on 2.
Well, slam it on 2.
Oh, sorry, slam them on 2, not 4. If I'm just flame slashing something for 2 mana on turn 2, I'm not going to feel bad about it. But if I'm pathing them on turn 2, I'm probably going to second guess it.
Right.
But that being said, when I overload either, so Mizium Mortars flame slashes their whole team, and Winds of Abandon is path exiles their whole team. The Winds of Abandon is significantly better, but again worse early. So I think flame slash is actually a very good comparison. But
kills hexproof.
It does. Yeah, it doesn't target it, which is great. So I think Winds of Abandon is an easy card to swap in if you play Declaration Stone, which I still do. I think a handful of people do. Unless you're afraid of the, Drugansky, don't want too many Wrath effects. Which I think is fair. I don't play Terminus anymore. I haven't really placed Terminus' rule, and I think having this effect is interesting. I think this card is regardless good enough. I think at the end of the day, this card is just good enough. It's just whether or not, you kind of, don't want too many Wraths and that. This card does act as a Wrath, turn 6.
I usually play it safe. I don't add it, and then I think about it for a while. How many of these, how many Wraths do I see every draft? That kind of thing.
No, it's nice. You want to do your checks and balances, and this is definitely one of them. Definitely a card that does a bit of everything, or a bit of both, I should say. I'm very happy with it. I'm definitely trying it again over Declaration Stone and see how often the second guessing killing their 2-drop is. But yeah, again, the upside of this, the ceiling on this card is super high. It's insane. And like this last card we've been talking about today, until we didn't sandbag that many. There was a couple, like the Mythic Savannah Lines. That one. That card's like probably okay. We'll talk about it later. Anyway, Red and 6, a card that's less okay probably, but everyone loves, and this is like maybe the most loved, one of the most like talked about things on the Cube subreddit at all points, and it's the red-green lands matters theme. So it's red-green, legendary Planeswalker Ren, 6. I don't know the flavor of Ren and 6, but it only refers to Ren and not Ren and 6.
Maybe Ren is the dude.
I think it's
and
a thing.
6 is the car.
So I heard
They're just driving true folk around.
I heard somewhere it's like an Eldrazi and an Angel. I don't believe or know how legitimate that is. I'm gonna say it anyway because it kind of looks like that. Anyway, so 2 mana, 3-star loyalty, +1, return up to 1 target land card from your graveyard to your hand. -1, deal 1 damage to any target, and then -7. You get an emblem with instants and sorceries in your graveyard have retrace. This card is a barrel of monkeys.
Before you go on some like random tangent again, if 2 mana Planeswalker, if the only other bar we have is like what Tybalt, this is pretty good Planeswalker.
Yeah, no, this card I guess it's the face value. Like in a constructed world where I can build around this card, the card's sweet. Like super big fan of this card. Super cheap. It's again very little work to fit into a deck, or you very easily build a deck where this card is
like
very
4
good.
mana walkers that have this ping 1 effect, and it's just too late. But turn 2.
Yeah, again in constructed, this card seems really really sweet. Limited. So this opens the debate: is the red green lands matters deck good?
It's fun. I think it's been a long time since I had it. I'd say.
Oh, I don't even know if you
years?
had it. You had a Crucible Worlds in your cube.
Yeah.
I don't know if that really makes it the Lands Matters thing.
I sometimes had a strip mine that go with it.
Well, Strip Mine, Wasteland, Canopies.
Wildfire.
You know, there's the odd card that makes that card good. So I think this is a good point. I really dislike the idea of looking at the idea of the red green Lands Matters theme or the Lands Matters themes in general. I think kind of polluting your cube, or diluting your cube with cards like Molten Vortex, or Life and Loam, these kind of cards that need a whole cast of cards to be good, in conjunction with each other. Like, no one card independently is good enough to make it good, with the closest one probably being Crucible Worlds. Kind of like Birthing Pod. Birthing Pod is probably an okay example of, I can build the Birthing Pod deck, but it's like having a Birthing Pod, and then I have to have the chain of creatures that makes Birthing Pod good. But having the chain of creatures isn't a super hard requirement to make that deck work. But having the Lands Matters theme, what's the payoff? So I'm probably going to have some amount of Ren and 6, Crucible Worlds, or Life from the Loam, or Remnant Up Excavator, with some sort of like enabling card, not enabling, proactive card like Wasteland or Fetch Lands, or things that obviously lands and get some sort of benefit out of. But all of this spoils to like, I can probably wasteland them an extra time. Like, if I can wasteland you every turn, that requires me these like couple cards to kind of make good, or set up this Molten Vortex, Life from the Loam, all these kind of things that I'm trying to like just make one or a couple cards playable. Is it worth playing this many cards? I think the easiest comparison you can make it to is Storm. But what does it take to make Storm good? What does it take to make a Grape Shot, or Empty the Warrens, or Tendrils of Agony, or Mind's Desire? What does it take in a limited environment like Cube to make those cards good, consistent, and actually powerful? Like,
I guess just for the record, I'm not including this. Not
neither am
by a
I.
long shot.
And like, I have a very strong opinion
compared
about
to
it.
Storm, it's a pretty benign type of deck to support.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't do as much as, say, Stacks or Aristocrats, which is similar small little pieces going together.
I think where I like to pick pick my battles of where I like to build around me, or cards that kind of let people do these kind of things. Or I like to choose the cards that are the most open-ended, and try to make them fit into the most things possible. And I think Crucible Worlds is probably that kind of card. You can, again, it interacts with Wasteland Strip Mine. It interacts with like fetches. It can interact with Wildfire. It can interact with Stacks. It can kind of fit into things without having to put in other cards to make it good. Like, if you're already doing these other things, then Crucible Worlds is just an interesting card you can add to make have another angle for these decks. Where I think if people are trying to go like, "Yo, what do I have to do to make Ren and 6 good? What do I have to do to make what do I have to do to justify Ramunap Excavator in my list on top of Crucible or Life from the Loam? Do I should play Cycle Lands? Like, how many cards do I have to commit to make these like fairly narrow cards that'll only really go into this archetype good in my pool of cards? And I just don't think it's worth the investment. Similar to Storm, in order to make these Storm payoff cards worth it, you have to play the ritual effects, more looting effects, maybe more of these like watered down, find specific instant sorceries effects to ultimately make a not even that good of a card pay off in limited. And I think the Lands Matters is kind of a similar trap that you try so hard to make these archetypes, to make this effect good, that it takes very little to disrupt. Like, even if I get this like Wasteland, whatever, Ramunap Excavator, all these things going at one time, it doesn't take too much work to disassemble.
You got that new disenchant from the last set. Just get rid of that one card in the graveyard.
Oh yeah, the naturalize that also owns a card in the graveyard.
Yeah.
So back to Ren and 6 I do not think this card is good. Gruul, while it is polluted with 4-drops, I don't think that the Ren and 6 is the opposite end of the scale. It doesn't really do anything. But hopefully it comes down and pings an X1, and that's probably if this can come into play and arc lightning over the course of 3 turns and get 3 things, that's the best it can be. That's bananas. But this card is like so much work, I think. And I think the idea of like, oh well, if I just get back, I'll fetch land. It's probably worth it. Like, it probably isn't worth it. It's not worth a slot in your cube for that effect. Like,
I guess if I was playing this card and its only purpose, like primarily in my deck, was to get a land back, I would like a 1 fetch land. I'd probably just run another land.
Yeah. Again, beyond being able to arc trail over time, I really don't see any upside to this, unless you work way more than you should just to make this card good. But anyway, that's it. That's enough of Ren and 6 and coming down on Lands Matters. Anyway, that's the first half of the set. The set was very interesting. I feel we spent more time talking about maybe even cube theory of how good are swords and how good are lands and how good is this and how good is this effect, more than we did actually talk about the set. Because I think the set has fewer just like unique cards. You know what I mean? I think the black card, the Force of...
None of the cards are really unique.
No, I think like the Force of Negation, or not Force of Negation, sorry, Force of Despair, the black Force of Will, is like the most unique card we talked about, and its effect that it rarely comes up. So while the set has a lot of cube cards, a lot of like very very playable cards, which is like a gift for the set's a gift for everybody but modern players. It's been very very good for us. So even though there's a lot of like subtle changes, tweaks, nerfs, buffs, if you will, it's a great cube set overall. But yeah, that said, this first half, we think it's 121 cards spoiled as of today, May 26th. So I assume new spoilers start tomorrow, and we'll get we'll have the last half by next weekend, which we will most likely record the second half of this. But anyway, I guess that being said, I'm Aaron.
Andrew.
And thanks for watching.